Thank you. It's gone 6 o'clock, so we'll get started with our meeting, the second ordinary meeting of council for November. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort Kayan Kadak Nijawalila Butcher, we're Janang Wajak Kadijin, we're Knitting Bula Yeah. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the greater Fremantle Walyalap area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. For those joining us in the gallery, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live online. So while all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question may be captured in the recording. Attendance apologies and leaves of absence. We have Councillor Graham on a leave of absence, and we have Councillor Archibald attending online. And I think we've done a tech check, and I believe it is all working correctly. We have an application for a leave of absence from Councillor Graham from the 4th of December 2023 to the 31st of January 2024 inclusive, moved by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thanks, Councillor Archibald. I can see your hand online. That's great. We have an application for a leave of absence for Councillor Ingrid Van Dawson from 20 January 2024 to 5 February 2024 inclusive. So moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Williamson Wong. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Are there any other applications for leaves of absence? No? All good. Okay. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Williamson Wong?
Yes, declaring an impartiality conflict of interest for Point Street because my uncle works for Architectus, but happy to proceed and take on the officer's recommendations from there. And a financial conflict with the schedule of payments because my dad is the chair of Shelter WA.
Can I get some silence from the public gallery, just because we are trying to live stream, so we don't want to have too much background noise? Okay, so for the second item, you will be leaving the chamber?
Yes, I will be.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any further disclosures of interest? Thank you. All right, there were no questions asked at the ordinary meeting of council that needed a response, so on the 8th of November. So that takes us through to public question time now. So some of you may not have been here since we've changed the committee council structure. So we have public question time. Public question time is for items that are not on the agenda and for statements on items that are not on the agenda. It's also if you prefer to ask your question or make your statement in public question time, even if it is on something that's on the agenda, you can do it in public question time. The alternative is that we are taking now questions and statements prior to each agenda item. So, for example, if you wanted to ask a question on Point Street or make a statement regarding the Point Street item, you could do that before the Point Street item. So I hope I'm making that clear. What I'll do is I'll run through the sheet as I understand it with the people who wanted to say something in public question time. I might just check with a couple of people whether they'd prefer to wait for that item to come up on the agenda or whether they'd prefer to have their say during public question time in case they want to go home or whatever. But we'll proceed on that basis. So the first person I have listed is Ian Kerr.
Thank you, Mayor. As most of you will be aware, last Thursday the WA government announced revised plans for replacement of the Fremantle Traffic Bridge after 12 months or more of silence. Thankfully, this latest proposal removes almost all the contentious, often unacceptable aspects of previous proposals, but there is one principal exception, and that is the retention of any part of the existing bridge. And that has generated a fair amount of public comment already. However, the current traffic bridge is not a one-off artefact, but part of a continuum of river crossings in this location, both before and since European settlement, and including the ferry capstan on the southern foreshore. This is not the first time a bridge in this location will have been demolished. Almost by accident, we have remnant piles from two earlier bridges in the water near the North Riverbank, and it would provide an historically consistent record to retain something similar of the current bridge under the new one. Looking at the video simulation of construction, it appears that this should be possible, as the main support structure is outside the width of the current bridge. It would, however, require careful attention to the details of the northern foreshore and abutment. Main Roads has, I note, committed to undertaking further investigations around retaining remnant piles in the river. At the same time, this would only tell part of the story, which should be told in a more comprehensive way, from before European settlement to the current day. Main Roads has already presented, for example, at the first community information session in August 2020, substantial display material on the history of the Swan River crossings. In addition, there is in the WA Maritime Museum a 1933 built model of the 1866 Bridge of Styx that was donated by the Royal WA Historical Society. So my question is, will the City of Fremantle work with Main Roads and the Maritime Museum to commission, perhaps through a competition, a comparable model of the current traffic bridge, with the intention that both models and the historical information from Main Roads form the basis of an interpretative exhibition at a suitable location? Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we'll take that one on notice. Yep. The next person I have listed for public question time is Heather Wright.
Good evening. I was here a month ago. I talked about a breach of Section 17 of the Code of Conduct. You directed me to the minutes. Your minutes state, Council adopted a budget amendment for the voice expenditure. How is this not a breach? It says in this list of activities, monies were spent to raise awareness about resources and information available on the referendum. Again, Section 17 of the Code of Conduct specifies that our rates are not to be spent in this way, but your minutes clearly state twice that you have done so. I would like to know what action will be taken to rectify this.
Have you finished your statement?
Yes, that's a question.
Yeah, that's fine. So you say your piece and then I'll ask the CEO to respond, but we won't enter into a back and forth. So if you're finished speaking, then I'll ask the CEO to respond.
All right.
Thanks.
Through the chair, and to be clear, Clause 17 of the Code of Conduct requires individual elected members not to use resources of the local government in advocating for a referendum outcome. The exemptions to that are approval by me or approval by the local government. This local government made a decision to expend funds to promote notice of the referendum on the voice. So under that Code of Conduct, the local government gave permission for funds to be used.
Thank you. The next person no. Excuse me, you can't get up in the public gallery and continue speaking. It's against our standing orders. So while you're up at the microphone, you make your statement. When you sit down, you cannot continue to interact. And that's just meeting procedure. And I just want everyone in the gallery to be on notice about that. Thank you. I will have to ask you not to stay if you are going to continue to make a disturbance. So it's your choice. You're welcome to sit and listen to the discussion, but you can't keep interjecting from the public gallery. Good. Okay, the next speaker is Dominique Mimnar.
Good evening, Council. I didn't know you spoke Aboriginal, Hannah. I'm sure those people out there on the step would appreciate that. I'm sure it helps them a lot. Okay, so my question on page 621 on the monthly financial report, 31st of October 2023, I have a question 1. So the acquisitions table states the annual budget of 25.79 million and the year-to-date actual spend at 2.22 million, representing a 9% spend. So we're 4 months into the financial year. The spend for the 4 months should be at 33%, which is 8.5 million. What are the reasons for the underspend? Question 2. The capital grant table states the annual budget of 8.67 million and the year-to-date actual spend at 0.46 million, representing grants to the City of Fremantle at 5%. What are the reasons for the grant money being so low 4 months into the budget? Who are the government bodies that contribute the capital grants and to which project? And I'd like to hand this in to the CEO, please, and put this on notice.
Ask the Minute Secretary to take that from you. Thank you. Okay, and the next person I have, okay, so I've got, the next people I have listed are Elizabeth Megros, and that's on Point Street. So we can take that before the Point Street item, which is next, or you can speak in public question time. Okay, well, let's do that now then.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Megro and I live in South Fremantle. First question, Fremantle Biennale and artwork destruction. It's the second botched project. Who is responsible for the destruction of Athena? Is it the Fremantle Biennale or the City of Fremantle? Will the artwork be restored? What are the associated costs to the ratepayers? The term a modern city seems to be the new buzzword, following on from livable, lovable, activated and revitalized city, which obviously hasn't worked out. Where can I find the definition of what a modern city in the context of Fremantle is? On the issue of parking, is there parking set aside for Fremantle councillors, for Fremantle staff admin? If yes, how many parking bay does it amount to in total? Is the parking available anytime? And what are the total costs to the city? Moving on to parking for the development of Point Street. This development has a shortfall of 33 on-site parking bays. 4 on-street parking spaces will be lost. It is argued that the loss of revenue from this parking would be offset by the increased rate stream from the new ratepayers to the city. Nothing is said about how it will impact the already stressed parking situation in Fremantle. 80 parking spaces will be lost from the Point Street car park. Given the existing parking stress in Fremantle and the problem escalating by cramping in more residents into a building that provides not enough parking, is it then justified to ignore parking policy and accept the loss of on-street parking to accommodate the developer's desire to extract as much profit as possible at the expense of amenity? What evidence or data is there of reduced car numbers and usage in Fremantle to support the rationale for ignoring parking policy and the loss of on-street parking? Will the lost parking from Point Street car park be replaced? On the topic of height, the development proposes a height increase of 60% from 5 to 8 stories, and according to the developer and supported by a legal opinion, it is allowable because nearby buildings are equally or taller. Having experienced firsthand that at least one Fremantle councillor on the JDAP panel speaks only in support of the developer and the development without regard to policy, 11th of March 2016, it would be important to consider the reasons why it would be appropriate to comply with the policy in regards to the building on the same block as the development, that is the old boys' school, the Princess May School, and the park, their setting and the scale, detail, and vibe of Fremantle in general.
Thank you.
Where can I find the arguments that reason for compliance with the policy? How many units, the number of bedrooms are set aside for social housing? Thank you.
I might just get you to hand in the questions if you do have them written down. Oh, we've got them emailed. Great, thank you. I think in relation to Point Street, if you do want to stay for the debate, a number of those issues will be addressed during the discussion. All right, and I've got Mei-Ring Chen in relation to, I think, the parking item. You're welcome to either speak now, Mei-Ring, or to wait till that item comes on the agenda, whichever you prefer. Wait for the parking item? Okay, it may be, I'm just foreshadowing that there may be some discussion on some of the other items before then, so you might be here for a little while if that's okay. Yeah? It's a little bit how long is a piece of string. It depends how long the debate on the first couple of items goes. I'm happy to bring the parking item forward, but probably we'll do the Point Street item first, so that is quite a substantial item. So, you happy to wait? Yep, great. All right, I think that brings us to the end of public question time, and the rest of the questions or statements we'll take before the items. I don't have notice of any petitions, deputations, or special deputations or presentations. Are there any presentations? Nope. Okay, I'll move that we confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council dated 8th of November. Seconder for that. Councillor Lorva, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Which brings us to elected member communication. Is there any elected member communication? All good. All right, so that brings us through to reports and recommendations from officers. The first is the Point Street item. So I'll invite the people in the public gallery on that item to make their 3-minute statements prior to that item. So I've got Matthew McNeely and then Jeff Holloway on that item. So whichever order you prefer. I'll get you to just turn the mic on again, sorry. Right-hand button.
Yeah.
Hey, perfect.
Thank you. Never been any good with technology. So thank you and good evening. I don't have a lot to say on our Point Street redevelopment. I think you've been provided with a pretty significant package of information this evening to consider. However, just at a very high level, this has been and is sort of almost the final plank in what has been a very long journey for Sarona Urban and its participation in the urban renewal of the city of Fremantle. When we ventured out on what was King Square at the time, now Walyalup Court, that journey, it was very much about delivering office accommodation into the CBD, so office workers that would populate the city Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, a very substantial retail footprint that would create connectivity between all of the very important precincts that make up the Fremantle CBD. But there was always a desire on our behalf to bring and see a substantial residential population grow within the CBD. And I've been up in front of this council many times stating the fact that it has always surprised me the lack of density in what is a really strategic metropolitan centre that could handle a lot of people without a lot of infrastructure cost impost associated with it. We've always seen the East End of the city as the most logical and likely location for residential development. Run down, again, it continues the urban renewal journey that I spoke of. And we'd coveted Point Street, I've got to say, way back in 2013 when you sold it to SKS. We were certainly in and around the mix, but we were just too far concentrated on our King Square project at the time. So fortuitously, the property came into our hands about 18 months ago. We have been very considered in our approach to the development. We are trying to maximise the number of residences that we are creating. So the 214 apartments is about the right number for us. It also allows us to consider two different models, both build to sell and build to rent. So there is some need under a build to rent model for an element of critical mass, so they don't really work under 200 apartments. So that has driven a bit of the scale, but also we think what we're proposing and what our team is proposing, which I think has been very ably led by Architectus, it has come up with a really desirable product that incorporates not only our site but starts to look at what is around it. And as some of you would be aware, we are in a process with both the City of Fremantle and other developers, so namely Adrian Finney with Hesperia, who owns the Wool stores, and also Gerard O'Brien, about how we actually precinct the development. So we'll just be one part of what I suspect will be a pretty significant number of residential developments that will occur in and around this precinct. I would hope that it will be the catalyst for more residential development out towards the Fremantle traffic bridge, so along Queen Victoria Street. But I just wanted to sort of, I guess, really articulate for you the thinking behind, at a high level, why we've taken this project on. I'd welcome your support, of course, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I might suggest that Mr. Holloway speaks next, and then if elected members have any questions, we can put them. So, did you wish to speak as well? No. Yeah.
Just happy to take questions if needed.
Yeah. So, were there any questions from elected members for the proponents? Councillor Sullivan.
One of the elected members during the week has raised the issue of the rubbish bin collection process, and I know that that's been regularly raised through JDAP as well as to why the city's approach to rubbish collection seems to be different to other councils. So can you just explain what is the current proposal in terms of bin collection days? Obviously the externalisation of rubbish collection.
Thank you.
The City of Fremantle has a rubbish collection strategy that is verge collection, and at the moment does not permit access to private sites for rubbish collection at the moment. So in the process of designing this building, we were aware that verge collection could be unsightly, particularly given the number of bins and the regularity of collections. So we have designed a building that complies with the current council policy of verge collection and have given 3 options on the frequencies and the impact of the number of bins that may be on the verge. That response does not address what happens to the parking that is in the street where the verge collection might occur. So that's a bit of a... But in parallel with that, we have designed the building to have access for garbage collection within the premises and garbage rooms to support that, so that if in the event that there is a change in the council's policy for verge collection for commercial areas, access into the site, turning circles, truck access, the right size bin areas compactors and so forth are there, so that I'm hoping that during the next few years, when this building is delivered, that there is some change in policy. The alternative is that we're allowed to engage private collections to access the site. Does that help?
Thank you. I might just, while you're up there, Mr. Holloway, put the question that came from the public gallery as well around the shortfall of parking bays and the discretion there. Can I just clarify, was that resident parking bays or is that in the visitor parking bay category?
I'm not sure that there is a shortfall. In fact, we're doing everything we can to minimise parking on the site. There's about 215 apartments and some commercial areas. The commercial areas have allocated car bays. If anything's going to happen, we expect that we'll probably reduce the number of car bays available over time. If we head down the build to rent model, then that will automatically reduce parking. As far as visitor parking is required, the town planning scheme doesn't require visitor car parking.
Thank you. Elected members, anything else? Nope. Nothing from Councillor Archibald. Okay, well, I'll look for a mover then for the officer's recommendation on this item. Moved by Councillor Lang and a seconder, Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Lang, did you want to open?
Actually going to speak to this. I think I'm just really pleased to see something happening here. It's been on the agenda definitely for the last 6 years I've been on council, and I think this is the best proposal that I've seen put forward for Fremantle and that east end of town. So I'd be really excited to see this one approved and built and more people living down that end of town.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, I'd echo those sentiments. I had a look back, and one of the first meetings that I had on council was the approval of the hotel on that site, and obviously that never happened. And I'm grateful to see that the development is now in the hands of an organisation who has done some great work in Fremantle already, and really excited about the opportunity of having several hundred more people living in Fremantle, the centre of Fremantle, and to identify those other opportunities in that same precinct to create a real residential hub in Freo. So, yeah, fully supportive of the approach. The question in regards to waste was one that I raised during the week, and if this is approved through JDAP, yeah, really urge our council officers to work with the proponents around those various management plans to ensure that the impacts are minimised and eliminated where possible.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin. Any other councillors? Councillor Kamada?
Yeah, we'll make a comment on this, thank you. Look, I think this development, being in the East End, I think it is the right place. I do think the way it's been designed does address some of the issues that have been raised, and they're good. They were, good points that were raised about making sure that the building it considers the surrounding buildings, and ensuring that we have the amenity. One other point I'd like to make is the parking. We seem to lose parking with every development that comes up, and people do need to drive to get into. Not everyone can catch a train. Not everyone can ride a bike or walk. There are people that need to drive into town. Our businesses need it, and I just hope that we do go down the path of replacing any parking that we lose in some form or another around the city. Thank you.
All right, I might just get planning officers to clarify on the parking, because it seems that the report doesn't seem to suggest a shortfall other than in motorcycle parking. Is that?
Through Chair, the residential parking is compliant. If anything, it does have an oversupply of about 20 car bays for the dwellings. As Mr. Holloway pointed out, there is no visitor car parking required for the residential apartments. Where there is a shortfall against the scheme is
the commercial tenancies on site. So that's where the 33 bay shortfall does come into play. There's also a number of car bays being removed in the public verge of the city's bays as well.
Thank you. That helps clarify that. Councillors, are there any further comments on this one? Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I just wanted to address a couple of things. That the waste management approach is something that has concerned quite a number of councillors over a number of years, and I know that the city has informed us that they are working to look at the way we collect our rubbish into the future to ensure that these types of apartment buildings can be developed without the rubbish bins out on the street. And it's really critical that we are able to achieve that. And I know that I've urged city staff regularly that we need to change. And so I'm very pleased to hear that the building is future-proofed so that that can happen. It's not like we haven't done this before. We've got, there aren't rubbish bins out on the verge at Leighton Beach, and that development is serviced without the need for hundreds of bins to be dragged out into the street. So it is possible. It is what other councils do in high density areas. It's what we need to do in high density areas. The second thing is the issue of height, and I appreciate, as the chair of the group that looked at the whole precinct overall, we did set some very ambitious height opportunities, but we also put in place some fairly rigorous assessment as to where height could be and where perhaps it shouldn't be, and whether it should be stepped back in certain locations and the like. And that was a process that the community engaged in, and the council ultimately agreed to. And this does set some variation to that. But I want to emphasise that of all the sites in the city centre, this is the site that has the most amount of space around it. Both Cantonment Street and Adelaide Street are the two widest streets in Fremantle. And through that process, it was recognised that they could accommodate taller buildings. But not only are they the two widest streets in Fremantle, we have a park right next to this site, which is on the north side of the park. So this building typically is not going to create massive overshadowing of a public parkland, but will set the backdrop, frame the parkland in the same way that the Wool Stores does, the same way the Basilica does, and the like. And it's on that side where the articulation of the building has been handled in a way that doesn't present a solid wall, but has a large courtyarded void in the building to accommodate the scale to such an important public place. So the last thing I would say is that in terms of how one views a building like this from the street, in those streets that we're talking about, whether or not the top floors, 2 floors, are set back significantly, as perhaps the scheme had intended, or whether they're presented the way they are, in my estimation, is really not going to make a lot of difference. Those are the 2 streets in Fremantle where we not only already have an amazing avenue of trees in Cantonment Street, we have the potential to achieve the exact same feel in Adelaide Street. And, for large parts of the year, I would defy anybody to look down those streets and imagine that it's this building that is going to be the thing that is the lasting memory for them as they're in those streets. It is the avenue of trees and the sense of space that creates. So this building doesn't have the level of impact on the public realm that even, say, a building on the Wool Stores shopping centre might. It has the ability, its site location is such that it can accommodate this. And a building is much more than its skin anyway, as we well know. its functionality, its purpose, what it delivers to a community is one of the most important things in building design. And the consideration of the way in which the unit size, the unit diversity, the provision of some commercial without overdoing it, so as to sort of rob the city core of commercial. So it's bespoke commercial in that area is what we need. The way it's been arranged so it does genuinely activate the park. These are all things which go to why the Design Advisory Committee recommended, praised the way this building had been presented. And compared to some of the previous proposals, which seemed to get kind of like less credible with each proposal, this is sort of a step significantly back in the right direction of good design. So I certainly support the effort that's been made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I won't repeat all of your comments, but I think it is a very, it's a very likeable outcome on this site for a number of reasons. One is it's density done well, and we often sort of throw around this term of density done well, but we do want density. We want people living in the city centre, but we want that to happen in a way where they get natural light into their homes and they have lovely open space that they can use, and they feel connected, they feel like they're part of a community. And I think certainly reading through the Design Advisory Committee's review of this particular development gave me a lot of confidence that those things had all been considered and considered very thoughtfully. And I think the other part that I feel really strongly about is diversity of housing. So those of you who went on the Strategic Community Plan journey with us would know that one of the biggest issues that kept coming up was that it is incredibly hard to get a foothold in Fremantle. And, you know, it's social housing and affordable housing is one thing, but just actually having properties that are of different sizes, scales, and you know, the property mix is also part of that solution. So it's good to see that this has some diversity in it, and I'm optimistic that it'll give people who might not otherwise have the chance to live in Fremantle a chance to get into the market here. So yeah, I mean, in conclusion, you know, this goes through to JDAP. Certainly I think we'd like to see action down this end of town sooner rather than later, so we will be very hopeful that, like the neighbouring Woolstore shopping centre site, there will be cranes on the horizon at Point Street before too long. Councillors, any further comment? Or Councillor Lang, did you want to close? No? All right, well, we'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Great. Thank you. Now, I might bring the item that we had someone in the public gallery for, which was the parking one. So I might bring that forward if councillors are comfortable with that. Yep. So that's the C item 231115, and Mei Ring Chen wanted to speak on that. So Mei Ring, do you want to come up to the microphone and give us your 3 minutes on the parking?
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Now, first, this implementation is going to cost around $3 million. The first question which came to my mind is what will happen when the Optus outage, which we had last week, happens again, and how is the city going to deal with it when the car parks can't be accessed, or I don't know how that is going to work, because one of the things you're going to use is number plate recognition and mobile phone payment. And the next thing is it would be good if you could keep cash option available for people who don't have mobile phone. I know people who don't have mobile phones. And I think that the improvement of satisfaction for parking in Fremantle will be if it's cheaper, because that's what I hear from a lot of people coming from outside. First, it's difficult to find parking, and then it's quite expensive. And now with the development of the 8-story building, there's less parking will be available. And so this to me looks like slowly creeping into the smart city idea with the control and surveillance. And how is the city going to deal with the data? Because that's going to a third party, and how they going to deal with it, and what measures are in place to protect our data from being misused or profited from. So that means that everyone drives wherever into the car park is always registered via the recognition, the number plate recognition. And how much revenue has the city raised in the last financial year for parking and for infringements? And with the abolition of cash, this looks to me like that we are one step closer to the CBDC. And then there's, can you explain the meaning of it's in the text, the ability to offer dynamic pricing in response to trends and utilization?
Okay, what I might do, so it sounds like some of the questions might need to be on notice because they relate to bigger issues. So it might be good if you can hand up the hard copy of the questions so that we can take.
You should have them. I feel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So we've got a. Sorry, wasn't aware. And then the rest of the questions we can either ask officers to respond to, but probably during the debate, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you want to stay for the debate on the item.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. So, councillors, I'll ask for someone to move this item. Yep, Councillor Lorver. And a seconder for the item, Councillor Moughlin. All right. So I'll try and ask officers to respond to some of those questions, but I'd ask elected members to also pick them up if you feel there was anything that you heard that you wanted responded to. Is it best to get the manager or the director to respond to questions? Yeah, okay. So I think the key issues I heard were questions around outages, data privacy, and responsive pricing and use of cash.
Through the chair. So firstly, our provider is not Optus. However, we will have measures in place. Most of or all of the parking arrangements are done through mobile SIMs, and we monitor them regularly. And if they are to go down, we send someone out straight away to, I guess, rectify the issue and get straight in touch with the telecommunication provider. With regard to cash, we're not abolishing cash. We are bringing in a range of machines that allow payment by cash, and we're assessing the utilisation of machines across the city as far as cash usage versus card usage. Where there's a high level of cash usage already, we will retain cash machines. In areas of the city where there's a lower usage or no usage of cash machines, we'll bring in the card only or pay by phone options. As far as the security of data, it's part of, I guess, the general contract of engagement with these providers. They're bound by standard Australian legislation around how we manage and secure the data we use. And the data is effectively the property of the city at the end of the day. So we work with the providers directly on that.
All right, I'll go to elected members then. So Councillor Lorver, did you want to open?
Yeah, I just had a question. In the report, it mentioned that the current machines are 10 years old and at the end of their operable life. And this contract is for obviously 2 plus 1 and 1 and 1 if the city exercises that discretion. Do you have an estimate as to how long the operable life these new systems will be? Is it just to the potential end of this contract, or is it potentially longer?
Through the chair, we expect them to be longer than the term of the contract. One of the, I guess, the the things we considered is that the current machines we use are the provider we are going to go with. So all of the spare parts that currently sit with the current machines can be used in the new machines. So there's a lower spend on spare parts throughout the life, but certainly whilst the current machines have been in service for over 10 years, they're starting to reach their limits as far as I guess the cellular network goes. That's one of the main issues we're trying to address, the move from 3G to 4G. Bringing the new machines in, we expect a longer life than the current contract. Absolutely.
Councillor Lova, did you want to speak as well as ask a question? All right, councillors on the item. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Moughlin.
There was just a question from the floor which wasn't responded to, and that was around dynamic pricing.
Through the chair, so the concept of dynamic pricing is that given we're looking at implementing an integrated system, we'll be able to monitor utilisation and data captured through our system. And what that'll enable us to do is at periods of low utilisation, we can drop prices to encourage people to come into Fremantle as an incentive. So it's more about coming back on the prices already rather than increasing prices. There's no intent to increase prices, rather reduce prices at periods of low utilisation.
Sorry, no, so not from the gallery. Councillor Moughlin, did you wish to speak further on that? Councillor Sullivan.
I wanted to pursue that because I know that is a genuine fear in the community about the extent to which the data can be analysed and then utilised as part of a marketing strategy that perhaps targets a demographic or users of facilities that were there at particular times and making assumptions about what their behaviour is and what they might be attracted to entice them back into the city. So do you have an expectation that it's purely just going to be for across-the-board campaigns, or are we at the stage where the sophistication of the data collection could actually be used more in a targeted way?
Through the chair, so the primary data we're looking at around marketing, and as with any marketing campaign, we're bound by legislation. So there's only certain things we can do with marketing data. We do have to work in partnership with the, I guess, the provider of the Pay by Phone app, who would be the primary supplier we work with on that marketing. They tightly control the user information associated with their users. So we're probably not communicating with people on an individual basis. Rather, we're targeting groups and, I guess, behaviours of usage and trying to capture that and put incentives in front of particular groups and demographics rather than targeting particular individuals based on their personal information.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the new app that will come with the system has a find a car park kind of function, which I think will be really useful. And I was interested in the report that it said 30% of CBD driving is just finding a car park. So I hope that that will help, because I know that there are always those kind of hidden bays in our city that some people don't necessarily know about. So I think that will be very helpful for people, and I'm excited to see that.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson-Wong. Yeah, I probably have similar sentiments about the issues that we hope that this new system, integrated system, will address. So we know that people find it hard to find parking in Fremantle. We know that we don't have great information about what parking is used when, because we're in a very old school system. And if we need to make decisions about investing in more parking, we kind of need to know how much is it being used, when is it being used, what's the problem that we're trying to solve. So I'm optimistic that we are moving towards a place where we will actually be able to get that kind of information and make informed decisions. But more importantly, that the visitor experience of coming to Fremantle will be enhanced, because, you know, like lots of other places, you'll be able to see what the availability of parking is like and where it might be available. So that's the end state that we're trying to work to. Obviously, the short-term risk is the end of the 3G network means that our current system is past its use-by date. So this has some level of urgency about it as well. But I know it's been a long-held objective of both the council and of the officers to get to an integrated system that actually allows us to see the whole picture on parking, and I'm optimistic that that's where we're going to end up through this process. Did anyone else wish to speak? All right. Well, if Councillor Lorver doesn't want to close, we will go to a vote on this item. So all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Look, I'm going to go back to the order of the agenda. I don't have anyone else listed in the gallery who is here for a particular item. If you are here for a particular item, I would ask you to put your hand up and the Minutes Secretary can come out and find out what that item is, and we can think about moving it forward on the agenda for you. Otherwise, we'll just crack on with the existing list. Okay, so the next item we'll go to then, I'm not seeing any hands up, is the extension to the free alternative. So that's the item 231112. Do I have a mover for that item? Well, I'm happy to move it. Councillor Law was happy to second it. Just write that down. So we became aware recently, or at least I became recently aware that this was coming to the end of the trial period. It's not something we've had a huge amount of take up on. However, I am aware that there are some current building plans around that do rely on this mechanism, and because it basically is no cost or pain to us to extend it further while we do a more comprehensive review about other ways that we might want to get this kind of an outcome. I personally thought it was worth extending it, even if it just means, you know, one more project goes ahead. So I am happy to support the officer's recommendation. Did anyone else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Sullivan?
Then I guess, in terms of where we're at with our ability to do scheme amendments, is this going to be blocked by our sort of current status of not being able to do scheme amendments, or is this considered outside of that? And just sort of where we're at with that, because there sort of is a backlog of scheme amendments that we all know that we need to get on with. So, and given that this one has perhaps not a history of a good take-up rate, whereas other ones might have had a better history, I'm just wondering how quickly we're going to be able to move on the other ones, and a sense of how long or how much energy goes into just doing this one alone, even though, you know, it sounds just like paperwork, but I know a lot of staff time goes into it. So I just want to get a bit of background about that in the context of all the other ones.
Right, I'll ask the Director to respond.
Thank you, and through the chair. It's actually a fairly simple process to apply for that extension of time. We're confident that that's not going to get embargoed by the fact that we haven't got our local planning strategy in place. With the conversations we've had with the department thus far, and even if we need to go out and advertise the extension, we now understand it would not prohibit the council from considering that policy should we get an application for free alternative in the interim. So we're fairly comfortable about that. Regarding the broader planning or suite of planning policies, we're looking at holding a bit of a workshop this side of Christmas to work through what we collectively think, both councillors and staff, what some of those priorities might be. So we're hoping to get that in the next month.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillors, anything further on this item? Okay, well, I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Kamada against, and that's carried. I would say, Councillor Archibald, I can't see far enough to be able to tell whether you have your hand up. So I can see you voting, but if you wish to speak, it might be an idea to turn your microphone on and let me know. Thank you. Okie doke. So this is going to bring us to the next item, which is the Fremantle Public Golf Course item. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Mofflin, and seconded by Councillor Archibald. Councillor Mofflin, would you like to kick us off?
I suppose that's the role if you do put your hand up, isn't it? Noting that this is for a business plan to be going out for public comment, I'm pretty excited by the opportunities that come from this, and to be able to see what might eventuate out in that part of Freo and the activation both economically and socially. I'm really looking forward to seeing what feedback we receive from our community. Would like to get an explanation from officers around the premise on the end of lease period and the return of the facilities to the city at the end, and just to understand the process around that and what our expectations are as to the state of the buildings and facilities when they are handed back. And then secondly, noting that we most probably can't look into a crystal ball that far, but would this be something that the city would consider operating at all in the future, or would it be a further leasing arrangement that we would consider?
Go to the director on that one.
Through the mayor. So as far as how we would receive the asset at the end of the term, there's a make good provision in the term of the lease, which sets out expectations around how we would want to receive that asset in a working order effectively. I mean, at the end of the day, if the operator was doing well and they wanted to continue to operate the facility and the facility was in good working order, then we would consider coming back to council for an extension with that operator, or similarly, depending on where we're at and I guess our knowledge in operating a facility, we could certainly look at how we operate the facility ourselves as well. But we're certainly expecting that as at the end of the 21-year lease, that facility would certainly still be operable based on some initial depreciation calculations we've done. And we'd hope to see a bit more life out of that building at the end of this current lease.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Mofflin? Councillor Archibald, you were the seconder. I'm just going to you in case you would like to say something.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I do support this recommendation. I just think it's now really important to ensure that the community has a really good look at the documents around this, and also comes forward and gives us some very good advice on what they think. I know that there are a number of people who I'm aware of who've been quite keen to see something like this happen, something that really steps the public golf course aside from just being a nine-hole golf course on a fairly modest scale. So I think it's quite exciting to see what's come before us, but of course, most importantly is to get that feedback from the community. It's my understanding it's going to be open to public comment for something like 6 to 8 weeks, so that will take us through to just after Christmas, New Year. And so, as I said, my goal now is to encourage as many people as possible to get involved with the feedback on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Lorver.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions, and I want to just thank staff for answering my questions earlier in the week. It really did help me. I'm still, have some reservation, but I guess with any big lease, there always is going to be a little bit of things on could it be a little bit better. But at the end of the lease, so potentially 21 years, the building will be there. So my first question, and I apologize for not saying this through, I just didn't want to bombard you too much. Would that do we envision then the rates that this place pays and would now be based on the buildings being there? I'm assuming that would be the case after the lease period, but just wanted to make sure. And then on the make good, a lot of it's focused, or not make good, but potentially hand over to the city. A lot of it's been, we've talked about the infrastructure, physical infrastructure, but this places a lot of technology. Like, you can go and play golf courses around the world. So I just wanted a little clarification that the handover that does not include technology or software that may make the place operable, and if it just only extends to the physical bits and bobs.
Thank you.
Through the mayor. So, I'm not sure I quite understood your first question, but rates certainly are payable throughout. Continue to be beyond that if the facility was operated beyond the term of the lease. Was that your question?
With the building, the rates might be calculated different. That was the rent payment. My apologies. The rent, and maybe it was rent basically, because the rent is based on the land as it is now, and not based upon having a building there. So just wondering if those figures might change after the term of the lease, basically. Sorry.
So the rent valuation is actually based on that current building being there now. It's just not based on the tenant building the building and making that capital contribution. So the rates would still be in line, pending any changes with the triennial GRV revaluation process, obviously. But yeah, they'd be similar to what you're seeing now. As far as the fit out, I guess, Launchpad is a proprietary product, so you'd certainly see a lot of that removed, and we'd have to consider whether we either continue down the path with that particular franchise or we invest in our own fit out.
Anything further, Councillor Lorber? No. Can I just follow on from that question then? In terms of the physical asset that would remain in that situation, I mean, that physical asset is similar to a driving range that you would see at, other golf courses around Perth. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the physical structure probably is. The offering being delivered is the first in Western Australia. So whilst the concrete structure would enable you to come in and refit a basic driving range, depending if any other players enter the market over that period, you could potentially have another operator come in and run a similar outcome.
Right. Councillors? Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thank you. When we were, I guess, planning for this process, there was a lot of talk about the importance of, obviously, the driving range in terms of making it sustainable and making it more broadly used by the community. But there was also talk about the potential for mini golf, not necessarily on the current site, but as part of the Boo Park offer. And obviously, in a very minor sense, the importance of putting greens, practice greens, and the like. Can you just speak to, are those particularly the externalisation of the current proposal, is it relatively easy for the proponent to come to us and say, I think this will work, or I think that will work? Can we now negotiate ways of improving the product for the community over the period of a lease? So, for example, even though something might not be included right now, is there the flexibility in what we're putting in place to provide the opportunity for the lessee to come to us with even better proposals down the track?
Through the chair, so they do operate other facilities across Perth, such as mini golf. Goanna Golf at Point Walter is an example of what this proponent delivers. I guess it comes down to the physical space being available within the leased area and whether they're able to configure the space to enable more uses to come in. I think if that's possible, the operator would certainly be open to coming back to us at a later date to either add an offering if it supports the sustainability of their business and adds value to the community. Yeah, I can't see why that wouldn't be a problem.
Follow up on that. But the original discussion about that was that the mini golf might be between the Olive Grove and the actual existing driving range. I know it doesn't feel like a lot of space, but there was talk about having a very long sort of mini golf opportunity. I'm not saying that that's what should happen, but if opportunities like that come along to improve the accessibility and usage of the park without being detrimental to it, would it be a simple operation for the proponent to come to us and say, I'd like to lease some more land? And have we even discussed that, I guess, openly and actively? Because that did seem to be part of the push from, I guess, the early stages of trying to create a brief for this development.
Through the chair, if there was a desire to implement or lease more land, and the operator was willing to do so and operate whatever the outcome was, I'm sure they'd be open to bringing it back to council for consideration.
I raised another question last time. It was to do with the sump over the road, and I look at the amount of land in the public street that we need to use for parking to help facilitate this development. But into the future, when the other areas around there are developed, street parking is going to be very important. We have a pretty ugly sump across the road, and I made the observation that we've got a lot of parkland on the golf course side, and if there are doing developments and putting in new facilities and the like, could we please investigate the opportunity for using our land in consult with the lessee to provide an opportunity to improve the verge on the other side of the street, which will improve their business anyway. So is that something that has been done? And if not, is it something that can be done, at least in a preliminary sense, between now and when this advertising is completed? Because it would be something that would need to be locked into the lease.
Through the chair, we haven't discussed developing land outside of the leased area that's being proposed. We're happy to raise that with the proponent, but the deal we're presenting tonight for advertising, we would need to change that deal to go down that path. And the terms of what we're proposing would possibly need to change, including capital contributions, rent, all those kind of things.
The question is not, I'm not asking them, the question is, should we be asking them to build our drainage sump? What I'm asking is, are we able to ensure that if there are works happening there, that we could include a drainage sump underneath, as Main Roads have done with the park as part of the High Street project, and then they put grass back on top of it. It just seems to me we need to learn to juggle with each of these items, rather than dealing with them individually and separately, and then find out that we don't have enough space somewhere to put in something that was simply able to be put in over the road.
I might just ask the Director of Infrastructure to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Yes, we took your point when you mentioned it last time, and I have asked the engineers to start to look at the practicability of doing that, and to then provide some feedback about how we might align that with project delivery and what sort of cost it might incur as well. So we're doing the feasibility, and we'll provide a report to follow.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to speak further, or not at the moment? Okay, Councillor Lorber, you've asked questions, but you've not spoken, so go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly ask one more question, if I may. And it involves the across the road where we create a depot, and it seems to me that this development would be really good for potential development on that site as well. And just wondering it, because we've had some conversations on whether the depot is going to stay there or not, and if allowing this to go forward might be advantageous for us to hold on to that property until this development is done,
versus trying to do anything across the road too quickly and may potentially move that. Is there a view amongst officers as to how this might impact our potential timeline to get rid of that site? Does that make sense?
Well, there are no proposals at the moment to get rid of any sites in the area, but I'll see if any officers want to add a comment to that.
Through the chair, thank you. Look, officers are investigating an alternative to our operations centre at the moment. We are intending to bring an item back to council in the near future, and we will talk about what we do with the current site as part of that conversation, but there's still, I think, a fair bit of decision making to go before we get to the point of knowing what we'll really do.
All right. Do we have further speakers on the item? Look, I'm not a golfer, so I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about golf because I'll get it wrong. But there were a couple of things I were quite interested in with this proposal. The demographics around people trying golf who might not otherwise try golf. You know, we allocate a lot of land to golf in our cities. It's a really land-hungry hobby, and sport and professional sport, and I don't discount any of that. But I think I'm quite interested in the idea that more people might actually try it out with a facility like this than currently do, because I think if we are going to give a lot of land to a particular sport, then it's good to know that there are new people coming through it and that people are playing it at all different levels, whether that's just having a go or whether that's becoming a pro. So I was quite glad to see some of the demographic analysis that was presented by the proponent that showed that a bunch of people who might not otherwise do it go along and have a go in this kind of environment. I did want to speak briefly to the community facility element of this. So for those of you who have been around for a while, of which I'm starting to number one of myself as one, when this initially came to us, there was a proposal to do an integrated community and golf facility, and really the golf facility at that stage was much more envisaging a golf shop and a little area, change rooms and the like, and a community facility and a linkage through a cafe or public sort of area. I think the community facility hasn't been forgotten, but it doesn't naturally fit now with this proposal that we have in front of us. This proposal is publicly accessible, so there is a cafe and there is places to sit and there's a sort of bar area and there's a commitment from the proponent to, make that available to community groups should they wish to use it. And, that's all good stuff. I think as a council we need to be clear that we have not forgotten about the community facility, and in fact we still hold money from the Main Roads Agreement to invest in a community facility. So while it might not be co-located with this proposal, the piece of work that we now need to do is work out in the broader White Gum Valley and sort of Fremantle, Knutsford, Amherst, that kind of area, what is it that people want now and in the future as the population continues to increase in terms of community facility. So that's still a piece of I just want to make it clear it's a piece of work we haven't forgotten about. We know that it's there. We just, we didn't probably envisage something quite of this magnitude coming through on the golf side. We look forward to getting the public comments on this proposal. The community facility is still a piece of work that we need to come back to. So I just wanted to make that clear for newer people and for people listening in at home. All right. Did you wish to close, Councillor Moughlin?
I just wanted to make I suppose a final comment around the scale of investment that we're seeing. And so it's 15.8 mil, $16 million that is going into this site, which is fantastic for us to achieve that. But to the same point, this is an investment which after 21 years could revert to the city, which is great for us, but it also tells me that they're predicting that this facility is going to go gangbusters and is going to be very, very busy. So great for us to do that. A few issues for us to manage around that and to get right. But yeah, if you're going to hand something over after 20 years after investing $16 million in it, you're doing pretty well.
All right, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. That's going to bring us through to the seasonal trading policy. Do I have a mover? That one. I know you have to speak first. You don't have to say very much. Oh, come on. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. And a seconder? Councillor Williamson-Wong. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks. I was going to say something, so I'm not just saying it for the sake of being the mover. It did surprise me that the current site is suddenly unavailable because someone planted a tree there. But that aside, the idea of having more facilities in the central area will probably greatly please my colleague, Councillor Lang, who has for a long time pushed that that's probably where the cafe should be. And of course, that's actually where the cafe was going to be in the original design for the South Beach improvements. The opportunity to shift it to that central location where it would serve both of our beaches there. But the interesting thing about this, I guess, it provides a little bit of a scope for some testing of the waters, in a sense, for how an increase in commercial activity goes in that central area. So I'll be keen to see how the community respond. They've obviously responded very positively to the existing operation there, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they think. So something that's temporary, ephemeral, is a good way to test that water.
Thank you. Any further comment from councillors? Councillor Lang, you got a good invitation there? No? All right, so I will put this one to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. That takes us to the proposed lease for lot 39 Daly Street. So a mover for that one. Councillor Lang. Seconder. Councillor Kamada. Councillor Lang.
I have an amendment for this item, and I'm happy to discuss that now and move that.
Okay.
If the room.
So we'll bring that up on the screen, and I will ask for a seconder for Councillor Lang. Councillor Moughlin's seconding. Yep.
Thank you. The reason for this just came about more through a question, as the language in the report didn't quite match the lease. Language in the report was around the leasee must commence construction, and then the recommendation was, the report was complete the path, and then the recommendation was commence. And I just queried which one it was, and I like the word complete more because it gives less wiggle room and less opportunity for them to commence construction at month 23, for example. So that's how this originated.
Thank you. On the amendment? Any further discussion? I'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? And that's unanimous. So back to the item as amended. Councillors? You might. Yeah, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Moughlin. It's all one thing, and anyway, one at a
Fast
time.
money in Sailor's Century, kind of.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make comment that it was interesting that we had the discussion 2 weeks ago around this, and the fleet-footedness of staff to go and take that feedback from council and look to come back. So I really appreciate that effort to do so, and maybe it also talks to the urgency with which the proponent would like to get this moving, but also how well this new system of 2 council meetings can work as well to try and make things happen a little quicker.
Yeah, well said. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to also thank the staff and Councillor Lang for moving this forward. It is a really important use of the land for the shopping centre commercially. but it's also an opportunity to open up some of that area that's been closed off for way too long. I'm actually quite excited in some ways that the community will get to see the old limestone quarried cliffs down there, because they are actually potentially in the future something that will be an important part of an open space precinct. There are, in fact, opportunities, for the community to really start seeing the potential of particularly the Daly Street tip site to be used in its entirety, not just in this small portion. And so hopefully that will also push the desire to have the tip site remediated and perhaps then used as open space in large areas. I'm also kind of, saddened by the fact that the panhandle, as I think Paul called it at the last meeting, is going to see a lot of trees removed, trees that I know I planted and others in the community planted. But I think on balance, if we can achieve the types of connectivity to the parkland beyond that is proposed, then the loss of a few trees that happen to have been planted by me and a few others probably is a loss that's able to be borne. The most important trees are the long stretch of trees that exist, I guess, on the west boundary of the proposed lease area. So I just wanted to say that because I know some people in the community are going to be upset by the loss of those trees. I will be upset by the loss of those trees, but on balance, I think we can live with that. The last thing I would say is I don't think the current plan shows enough landscaping, but that's a planning matter, not a lease matter. And I would flag that we should be looking closely to ensure that we get a well canopied car park, not a sea of bitumen, moving forward. So I don't know whether that is intended to come to planning process that the elected members will be involved in, or just a tick and flick. That's not my decision, but I would emphasise the community expectation that the car park these days should be well canopied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lorver.
Yeah, I won't repeat what my fellow councillors just said, but I did try to actually get back there and have a look, and it was extremely difficult. So, it's those fences protecting that area are very, very high. I think some of them might be electrified. I didn't find out, but when this does get put forward as a plan, I just really think having an access way on Bromley Place would be very a good thing, just to create more circulation in that area, so people don't have to all come out of one or two openings currently. Hopefully we get a place that people can park and actually circulate around through the area. It is a big spot, big space. I'm happy to support it with the amendment.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Lane, did you want to close?
Yep. Thank you. Unless you wanted to speak. No. Councillor Moffman, thanks for echoing what you were saying about the team. Matt and Amy, thank you for your help during the week and all my probing questions around that lease element. And I'm really impressed about how quick this has moved. 2 weeks it's light speed, and it's a good result. And following on from what Councillor Sullivan was saying, if we can see what the planning may look like, there's the canopy on the car park, and there's also going to be the canopy on our new bike path as well. So that's an important consideration for us.
Thank you. I think it's time to put this on to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Alrighty, that's going to bring us to the tender for traffic management services. Can I grab a mover for this one? You don't need to speak. It's okay. Anyone? Thanks, Councillor Kamada. What I've done here. Seconder? Councillor Lorver? Did anyone wish to speak on this one? Nope. All right. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Urban Forest Plan targets. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lorber. Oh, give someone a long, hard stare, it works. The seconder? Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lorber, did you want to open us in debate?
I just want to thank staff for thinking this through and how we can provide quality canopy across the city. This looks to be a much needed kind of redialing back of the current program. And in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be looking at a notice of motion that might be able to utilize some of this potential spare capacity, at least have it under consideration. So I'm happy to move and support this.
Councillor Sullivan, did you? I do want to acknowledge staff in this as well. I think it's one of those ones where we've set some pretty ambitious targets, as we should. And those targets and reality sometimes rub up against each other a little bit, and we've seen that through the planting program this year. We've also seen the staff be really open and direct about where things haven't worked out so well and how that's going to be remediated in the future. So it's great to see planning going in place now that gives the team some certainty that when we put a tree in the ground, it's a tree that's going to have a long and happy life in Fremantle, as we wish for everyone. I'm also pleased to see around the South Terrace planting that there's an opportunity to get some sort of works happening there that kind of complete some of that ambition. All right. Any further speakers? Councillor Archibald. Yay.
What was happening around the city in terms of the plantings that were in during the winter, and then were, very, very alarmed to see a great many of them start to dry up, die, whatever. And it was interesting in talking to the staff about it, trying to get the watering trucks out earlier this year than we had previously. That it was mentioned that not long ago we used to water in November. Last year we watered in October, and this year we had to bring the watering forward to September. So it's really something we have to look extremely carefully at, just how we manage that whole system, and give the new plantings the very best opportunity that we can. So not only looking at what species, where, what size, but also just the whole provision of services that wrap around those trees. So it's just a really good thing, I think, that we're pausing a little bit just to ensure that we give this project the best opportunity we can. That said, the wonderful thing is a good number of the trees that are in places like Broome Park and around the valley that I see frequently, once they were being watered, they actually started sprouting again. So it was really fantastic to see some of them come back. But it was a very challenging year this year, and I think the future for us in terms of the short winters, the long dry summers is going to be something we have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Lang.
Thanks. This year and last year in particular, following on from the work we all did to increase the canopy and the budget, the amount of trees we plant, and catch up to how many street trees we're planting. Ryan, your team's done a great job, and I might be an O'Connor in some back street I've never been in before, and there'll be a whole row of new marries planted in an area that perhaps never would have been planted before. And it just seems as though I go around every corner in the last 2 years, and we've managed to find places to put trees that will be canopy in 20 years. So I think the catch-up work we've done is noticeable, and a lot of people have mentioned it to myself. And in 20 years, then we'll really notice it, but I think we've done a really great job. So having this pause for 12 months and reinvesting that money in the South Terrace, that'll pay dividends as well. I think your team's been doing a really good job, Ryan, so thanks very much.
Well said, Councillor Lang. Any further comment? Alrighty, I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous, thank you. All right. Did anyone wish to speak on C item 19 or 21? I know. It's okay. C19 or C21? Yep. All right. So we'll take them one by one then. Councillor Archibald, C21. Okay. No problem. So we'll start with C19. I'll ask someone to move the statement of investments. Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Did anyone wish to speak on this? All right, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. For the next item, which is C item 20, Councillor Williamson Wong is going to leave the chamber. All right, so I'll get a mover for this item, Councillor Thompson, seconder, Councillor Moughlin. Did anyone wish to speak on this one? No. All right. I'll put this one to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Would someone like to get Councillor Williamson Wong back? I haven't tried doorbell. Oh, all good. All right. See item 21, monthly financial report. I'll get a mover, Councillor Kamada, seconder, Councillor Archibald. All right. Speakers, Councillor Kamada, you wish to open?
Just more one question, and just also thanks to Mr. Hammond for answering my questions today. Much appreciated, and cleared some of those queries up for me. I did have one additional question. I know that our capital expense on page 152, there's the graph there, and it's significantly under at this point. And I was just wondering, do you forecast that this trend will continue, and what are the reasons for this?
Through the chair, so it's probably a result of a number of factors. Firstly, there might be a number of projects that have been delayed. Also, there might be some invoicing that hasn't occurred yet, coming up to the end of the year. But I'm happy to get the Director of Infrastructure to make a general comment as well, if that would be suitable.
Thank you, through the chair. Typically, a lot of it does relate to phasing and planning of works and reaching that momentum really quickly, and often sometimes we're a little bit ambitious in terms of what we think we'll actually spend and when we'll spend it. So it is typically around invoicing and phasing that we find at the early part of the year. But you should see that momentum pick up as we go through the year.
Okay, that's the second part of the question. Thank you.
Councillor Archibald.
Had a question because I noticed that in this report, the rates had brought in an extra $1.78 million in revenue, which is a fairly substantial amount. I mean, we're fairly good at predicting what our rates will be, but there are a number of properties that would have had changes during that period. So I'm just wondering if the staff could give me a bit of a main summary of what the key properties were that did make up the bulk of that 1.78 million. So I think it's quite important for us to see the long-term project that we've had to try and improve property within the city, and I think now it's starting to be delivered. So if I could ask the Director of City Business perhaps to make a comment about the rates from certain properties.
Through the chair, so yeah, it was a noticeable jump. That is mainly attributable to FOMO. So FOMO, like all the other commercial properties, went through the GRV revaluation process, and as a result of that, the value significantly increased, and so did our rates take. Pleasingly, if you look at the numbers now, the rate revenue generated from that complex is now exceeding, I guess, the commercial revenues we were generating prior to that redevelopment through the car park and our existing tenancies. So it's a really good result.
Councillor Archibald, did you want to speak further on that? Yeah, you've got the
Yeah,
floor.
there's just one more that I'm aware of. Perhaps the Director of City Business could make a comment about the redevelopment of the Coles supermarket out at Hilton, which again was a very long-term project for the council trying to revitalise that whole area, and that again too has increased. So maybe you could make a brief comment on that one as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, given that that property has now been redeveloped and was also revalued, I guess the rates income we've generated from that has gone from about $100,000 per annum to up over $1 million per annum. So another significant increase. Good result.
Thanks.
It hasn't quite hit the books yet. That's true from the CEO. It's going through the process at the moment, but we'll see that in the next monthly financials.
Good to know. Councillor Archibald, anything further you wanted to add?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to wrap that up in the sense that I think this is just such a wonderful thing to see starting to happen, and hopefully we'll see it happen more and more in the CBD area as well. And tonight's planning application is another where if that development goes ahead, it will just be a phenomenal input in terms of the economy of our council and its ability to deliver services. So it's just wonderful to see these major projects start to filter through to our revenue side, which is only beneficial for our community. And just on top of that, we also got an extra $430,000 in interest revenue, courtesy of interest rates going up, which is not great for mortgage holders, but it is great for people who've got funds invested as we do. So it was a pretty amazing result all round for the revenue side with the account. So it's very pleasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Anything further on this item? All right, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we're going to go now into confidential business. Yep. If you are listening in, at the conclusion of the debate on the confidential business, we will turn the live stream back on and I will read out the decisions that have been made during the confidential discussion. Otherwise, they will be published with the minutes and probably also be available tomorrow in terms of the outcomes. So I'll move that we go behind closed doors. Get a second of that, Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? And that's unanimous, and we'll just pause while we